How's it going, guys?
Good, good. Thanks for
So I'm
having
here
us.
with Kay. I don't know what to call you by name because I always call you Sugar or Sad or Twos. Me and Anorak
Yeah,
always refer to you as Twos.
yeah, sure. Call me Kay. That's my
Kay.
real name.
All right, so we'll
Yeah.
go with Kay. This is Kay from Sugar Club and Misha from the project here that we're going to show you in just a second. It's super cool, especially in person, which I didn't even know existed until minutes ago. So this is so cool. I'm going to let you go ahead, Misha, and explain what's going on, and then I'm going to go ahead to the project in Decentraland.
Sure, sure. So I'm from Snark.art. We basically create interactive artistic experiences that utilize blockchain. But most of the time, we start by working with artists who are used to creating works in physical space. So the specific project started from the machine here. Artist composer Volkmar Clean. He's from Vienna. He created, essentially, he composed or he recorded sounds that he decided to essentially archive by recording them on a magnetic strip and then associating them with some drawing. The drawings are kind of not necessarily like, you don't know what this is going to sound like just by looking at the drawing. And then he prototyped this machine. I'm going to show you how it works. It's just basically you take any drawing and it generates a specific sound. And he has hundreds of these created. Like here's another one. Now, there's something magical about holding something physical that's like visual and having it like create sound. And like, for example, when you hold a record like a vinyl, when you play it, there's something magical about the sound coming from a physical object. You hear every scratch, every like piece of dust. And so when Volkmar started working with us, he wanted to like kind of take it into a digital world, but not necessarily recreate what was already in physical, but take advantage of digital to create something maybe more fascinating or more interesting. So the one thing that he was looking forward to is experiences where, for example, people can take and acquire these essentially digital, what we call sound drawings, and share them with each other, like take advantage of the whole blockchain infrastructure that allows you to, on the one hand, own something, but on the other hand, kind of use it as a key to some experience. And so on Snark.art platform, we created kind of like a digital canvas where people can share these drawings with each other and create visual collages. So imagine from something like this, you could create like from 50 of these drawings, you could create really kind of crazy visual collage and then play it. And it becomes like a composition, a complete sound composition. Maybe it's like 30 seconds long. But what we didn't expect when we released the project is what happened in Decentraland, where Seb from Momus collection, he grabbed like I believe like a couple of hundred of these drawings and created a completely unique interactive experience in virtual space. And this is something that I guess we're seeing right now on the screen, where people can experience kind of the magic of these sounds in a completely unique and different way. And this is where it really gets fascinating and amazing that essentially like this kind of like decentralized technology allows us to create like where the artist creates the inputs into this experience, and then different developers or studios can then utilize it in order to create even more enhanced experiences. And this is kind of where we are right now.
So I was saying before, I had been here before and I never knew what this was, and the sounds would scare me. Like I would come in here and I'd be like, "Why is this thing coming at me with this sound?" But it makes a lot more sense now. And honestly, I didn't get to read and everything like that. But it's a wonderful idea, and I really like the way it's put together is so really nice.
Not
Visually it's amazing. So I'd imagine
not
this is
at Polygonal Mind. I mean, they did an amazing job because
yeah,
ultimately this is not supposed to sound necessarily like music. Like we're
right,
used to hearing very popsy sound, something that like sounds good. But it's not necessarily that, like, you know, if you hear sound of the rain, it sounds bad. It just takes you into a different like sonic experience, and this is what they did here.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks really good, and like I said, now that I understand a little bit better, you know, I think I can appreciate it a lot better. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
super cool stuff.
Yeah, I really wanted to bring you here to this talk, Misha, because I visited the installation a couple of weeks ago when it was showcased the first time in Decentraland. It was really interesting, but I couldn't fully understand the context. So it's really nice to have you to talk a little bit about where it's coming from.
Exactly.
And also because it's a joint collaborative project, right? So there is like Polygonal gaming studios who developed the scene, and then you guys in New York. So can you tell us a bit about this collaborative project and who was involved?
So it started probably about a year ago when we started talking to Volkmar, who is the composer behind these sounds, about taking this project into digital space. And about 6 months later, we created on Snark.art platform. If you go there, you'll find the project. It has a similar title, sometimes 1,000 twinkling instruments. But the experience is very two-dimensional. And so when Momus Collection acquired, so yeah, if you scroll down the site a little bit further, there it is. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And if you scroll down, you see this canvas, and if you hit that little plus button,
Yep.
no, on the upper right.
Oh, excuse me. Upper right. Hold on.
No, you're right there. Yeah. Like start here. It says like start
Yeah,
here.
no, I had to move the faces.
So
Is it going?
yeah, this one. Yeah.
There we go. Yep. Okay, let me get these.
So you could take and click on any sound up above, and it gives you kind of some sounds emanating from that specific drawing. And that sound that you just selected, you could drag it onto the canvas.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
And then
you put it here. Okay.
making it bigger or smaller then changes the pitch of the sound, and taking it higher or lower like changes its level. And so
you can do it live.
Creates like a visual collage and allow people to share these drawings with one another and essentially create their own composition. So this was about 6 months ago. You have to be logged in to use more than the top 4, but you could play with the top 4 that are in the list right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let's go back. And I can this is smaller. Okay.
So this is just essentially collapses the sound onto like a single kind of, yeah, exactly. So then when we started working with Seb and Polygonal Mind, we connected them with Volkmar, and because they wanted to create a more kind of three-dimensional experience, an experience that you don't necessarily, this is like right now, this is two-dimensional experience. It's good for composition, but there's nothing, it's more about structuring something. Volkmar just didn't want it to be like a pure music editor, but rather like a visual editor that would still surprise you once you actually play it, what the combination of these sounds like. Like, for example, I have a daughter, she's like 7 years old, and she'll throw like 50 of these onto the canvas. And it's kind of some crazy stuff happens. Periodically, you'll hear like very unusual like combinations of like a violin and like a train or something like this. And it makes the experience interesting. And then when we go to Decentraland space, you have kind of already preset set of sounds that are moving, and their position relative to the avatar that is in the space creates a slightly different audio experience or sonic experience. Yeah. and I guess what's going to happen tomorrow, which is also kind of for us, it's a little crazy, that we're taking this from essentially virtual reality onto such a like traditional, radio, like not like audio radio, like not like visual kind of thing that we're doing right now, but just the traditional radio station to be able to play the sounds emanating from a virtual reality. It's like going back in time from the future, which is fascinating,
Yeah.
Like I'm curious to see.
So now the radio thing, is that going to be like just a series of sounds, or you guys going to be talking about it as well?
Man, I know just as much as you. Like, no, I mean, from our perspective, like I'm going to be there just more as a listener. In terms of how they're actually going to relay the sound from the scene in Decentraland, is probably more like Doug Sam can talk about it a little bit more from technical perspective. Maybe they're going to emanate the sounds from a specific location within the scene, or maybe a combination.
Okay. Well, it's super cool that you have like this collaborative effort on it, like having people from essentially, and that's what Decentraland is. It's like, you can work with people from all over the world. Okay, I think one of you guys is on the scene, maybe. The only thing you got to do is just mute your tab right here.
Work with people.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all good, man. But yeah, to me, that's what Decentraland is all about. Working with people from all over the world. We've already, me and Kay have done a few things together, just with the interviews, or whether it be the TV that I put together on the scene. And I'm working with HP on doing this video stuff. So I work with a lot of people that are in all kinds. Maddie's in Australia. So it's a beautiful thing to you end up working with people from all over the world, and you really can get some cool things done with some talented people. And I think that's a really good example. This is a really good example, I should say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. At Snark, we usually we work with artists from all over the world. Like right now, we created a fortune cookie project with a writer. He's American, but he lives in Berlin, and the fortune cookies are AI generated, and we didn't know anything about AI technology for generating like text. And so you start working with teams that you didn't know yesterday.
Yeah.
And there's, as long as you have like a super interesting idea, and especially now everybody's locked up in their houses, everybody's willing to try to create something. And, if stars align, you come up with something cool and interesting for people to enjoy.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely been my experience as far as even with the lockdown thing. You end up, you got a lot of people inside, and and next thing you know, people are willing to work with. Maybe they would have been too busy, prior. So it's nice to see that, though. It's nice to see people, willing to put themselves out there and work on different projects. Whatever they may be, because everybody's got their own thing going on out in Decentraland, and I bet in spaces like yours as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with digital experiences. I mean, right now, definitely there's a lot of demand for consuming digital content, and we're so it gets a little boring to even, for example, for us to meet in a two-dimensional application like Zoom. We're looking at each other.
Yeah.
I was on a panel for in Ukraine. They had this project where they asked these basically college kids to they broke them up in teams to come up with just more unique three-dimensional experiences, and things that are coming out are going to be incredible. Probably, as much as bad this whole situation is bringing to the world, I think it's also going to make a major push towards kind of more unique digital interaction, and
Absolutely.
We'll see more of it come out.
Yeah. I can tell just from my own experience with, this situation, it put me out of work, and then it put me into work essentially in Decentraland, I was, I was doing stuff, before, but this situation put me to a position okay, well, I've got to, work on this thing that I was already working on. I was already working on Decentraland. And then so I work a little harder now, I guess, or a lot harder now, to the point where I, probably going to just be doing this for a while,
Yeah, no, I mean, like, who knows what's going to happen in the near future. But, I mean, certainly, at least my limited interaction with this virtual reality world seems to, like, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot more that can be done. Yeah. And it's kind of good to get like artists and composers involved. That way you will get scared every once in a while, like you did when you walked into the space, just to, just to like have something different,
Exactly.
Something great.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, it's just, like I said, now it just really makes sense to me. And, what is this thing bringing me? It's taking me. But, it makes sense to me now, even though I can't, my God won't stand still. But basically, you can see the idea, and then you can change the pictures, and now you have a real good understanding of why you're changing the pictures and what is kind of happening up here. It's really cool, actually.
So essentially, it's like you're composing in real time. Those sound bits, those soundscapes, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Incredible. It's also very artistic. Yeah. It's an artwork in itself. It's really special.
Yeah.
I mean, it still boggles my mind that it originally came from these, like from this we went to what we're seeing right now on the screen. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Now, Misha, have you ever seen like when sound waves are applied to like a I don't even know how to explain this, like sand, and then the sand would change into different shapes?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that could be also another cool representation if you could achieve that in the 3D space like this. That's the first thing I thought of once you started explaining. I was like, oh, I have an idea of what, not necessarily that this is, but the general idea of using music as a visual, because it's all just vibrations and it can be represented in that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I guess when we went from these physical drawings to digital, we were mostly concentrating on manipulating sound through visual, right? So you, like, in that canvas that you played around with, you put the different like visuals together, you stretch them, you realign them, you make a like essentially a beautiful image.
Yep.
And you play it. But what you're talking about is the opposite side of it. So essentially you start with the sound and you create visual. I think that could be kind of interesting as well. You're right.
Yeah.
This is very interesting, Misha, because when I was at the university, I studied for 2 years at the Academy of Image and Sound in The Hague, in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And we were very busy with basically interactions between image and sound and ways to bridge these two medias together. So this really takes me back.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to see now that this is actually, this is happening in the metaverse. It's happening in 3D in the digital space. It's very, very nice to see.
Yeah, and also with like such a nice model. This model is very advanced, especially from anybody that builds. This stuff isn't easy, and I know Toxam has been one of the guys when it comes to modeling. And if you're watching on my TV, you would know because you're standing around the train that he has set up, and this stuff is super cool. It's like I said, it's super advanced, and it's a good example for anybody who's looking to try to get into building. What is possible.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, you can either create the experience that's outside of your physical space where you live and recreate it in digital, or you could let your mind go like much further and create that are unique or that are not possible in the physical space.
Exactly. Yeah, like that's one thing I want to try to get into at some point. A lot of times I'm just trying to put something together that is more like functional, but Will talks about it all the time. Will from the Block Runners or from the MetaZone, he talks about he wants to see and more things that are not necessarily possible in the regular world, and those things are definitely possible in here, but they become more advanced when you start building. It's a lot easier to build something that you have a point of reference with, as opposed to you got to let your brain just go crazy and then go in there and make it fresh off your crazy brain thought. you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's kind of insane. I mean, that's the stuff that was like during this panel in Ukraine. They came up with this. It's kind of like was also essentially a virtual reality world. But the idea was that some of the avatars would be run by AI, for example. So you like actually start interacting with artificial intelligence. And now after our like fortune cookie project, where I see how good that content can be, and that content, I mean, like AI can now generate stuff that's incredible. Like, I mean, absolutely incredible. It's not like you could tell that it's not human, but it makes sense at the same time, you know, and that's kind of crazy, you know, like it essentially creates its own voice. And then you could have this also part of this digital experience. It's not something that like you can still walk outside your door in physical space and experience, but in digital space you can. So
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Snarky or Snark? How do you pronounce it?
we call it like Snark.art.
Yeah.
We launched 2 years ago. We kind of were fascinated with like all these projects coming out with these NFTs, but we were more interested at that time to create things that are, because in the NFT space, when it started coming into the art world, it was all about kind of tracking provenance, because like art market is very non-transparent. No one knows how much anything should be worth, or like a history of a specific artist. And so the idea was to kind of use blockchain as essentially like a ledger for all these transactions and for art pieces. And at that time we were more fascinated with the idea of using smart contracts to add a certain level of interactivity. And so we created about 5 or 6 projects in the past 2 years. This is one of them that tries to create like less of a static experience. So it's not that you like, so basically each NFT acts both as like as an object that you can own, but also it acts as a key towards some experience. And that key could be, for example, to see something like it opens, let's say, a screening of some video stream, or a key could be, like in this case, the key was that if you owned a single NFT of this project, it allowed you to share with the rest of the community kind of these sounds so that you could start creating collages. But the very first project we did was kind of the most, like it was very ambitious at that time. It was like 2 years ago. We still weren't sure what we were doing. The idea, we took like a very expensive video artwork and we broke it apart into like thousands of like tiny videos, 20 by 20 pixel. And the idea was to kind of take this very expensive video, break it into tiny, essentially pixelated videos of like very small. And the ownership of a single one of these fragments allowed you to ask for the other fragments in loan for 24 hours. So like the idea, it's essentially created this mechanism to allow this artwork that's currently like, it's like in major museums, MoMA, Whitney, but this last edition, we wanted to give it to the people effectively. So you could have owned a small fragment of this video and loan it to people to see it, or borrow in exchange and be able to recreate this video at home. So like we do things like this that are kind of bridge between more traditional art ownership or creation, or something more interactive, where you start with something like this that is a physical object that only one person can technically own, and you take it into a digital world where now anything is possible, from like, you know, collage creation to what Seb did in Decentraland with this project.
This is, it's a super cool project, and like I said, just love seeing people working together in that way, because you know there's so much potential for so many way creative things in Decentraland that we haven't even thought of yet. And I think this is maybe even one of those that, like I said, I know that I had never I had never I didn't understand that, but now understanding it, it makes a lot more sense and is a lot more artistic than I understood. I think that we could, you know, use more projects that are of the arts, you know, and I've been interested in linking certain people to make maybe not that happen, but different kind of art pieces happen. Because I think that 3D digital art, especially when you kind of throw NFTs into the mix, that really changes the game. If you could have, let's say that project right there was just an NFT, somebody could then buy that NFT and deploy it to their land, and that would be their digital art piece that they actually owned, just like any other crypto art.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely this. I mean, there's huge potential right now that still is untapped, and for me, like I'm still a newbie to Decentraland and exploring the space, but effectively NFT could essentially, how should I put it? Artists create a lot of work, right? And they are looking for new channels, new audiences to create experiences. And so, but the problem with physical art is, again, it's generally is too expensive to produce, so that you can't ultimately give it away for $5 or $10 because you just spent 6 months working on it.
Exactly.
But a more decentralized type of experience where you could have a collective ownership of a single artwork, where you could have 1,000, 2,000 users, essentially compensating still the artist what they need to get to survive and to create more work, but not make it so expensive that like a normal person can't acquire. And now each NFT can also act like a key to the imagination of this artist. The artist could create an experience that's really unique, and it's again, it's like a hybrid between some kind of a ticket towards experience and the actual piece of the art that you personally would own.
Right.
Yeah. Also, in a sense, it gets to be shared and distributed to a larger community, because with one physical artwork, like you said, maybe you have a rich collector who can afford it, but with those NFTs, what's interesting is that it can get distributed and shared to a larger audience. I find this very interesting, actually.
Right.
Yeah, in the first artwork that we broke, the video piece, we broke it into thousands of pieces. There is only like a traditional way to deal with digital art was to edition it. So you essentially, the artist says, okay, I'm gonna create 10 editions of this video, and I promise not to create any more. And it's kind of like a very sort of outdated concept that doesn't work very well for digital medium. There is potential. There is like a much wider potential. I mean, digital content can fly with the speed of light. It can be, Franky, you have one today, Kay tomorrow, me and third day. And now with this blockchain essentially tracking this, you can have these kind of distributed experiences. So with the first artwork, it's owned. There's 3 or 4 museums that own it, and the rest are in private collections. I knew the artist for maybe 10 or 15 years. I only saw this artwork once when Museum of Modern Art in New York took it out of its archives for some exhibition. And if you just happen to be in the city where the exhibition is taking place and you're lucky enough to get in, then you see it. But that's kind of very limited. And part of the reason this artist wanted to work with us was because she was upset with the fact that this artwork had its heyday 15 years ago, but now it's rarely seen. And so the potential to essentially fragment it into thousands of pieces. And now we have shows. We had show in Italy, we had show in Kazakhstan, we had the show like this artwork shown in Berlin and South America. And this is just in 6 months. Whereas for the past 15 years, it might have been pulled out of archives maybe like 3 or 4 times. So.
Now that's another interesting point you brought up about like it being shown in a certain museum in a certain city at a certain point in time. We have the ability in Decentraland to deploy a museum in an instant. Like, for instance, now I'm a person with just 2 pieces of land, so that here at least. Now I was working on a different project yesterday. I was deploying that. I had it on the scene. We're taking pictures. And then in an instant, I turn around and I can put this TV up. And if I have another model that I want to put up and another thing to do, I can deploy that as well, just as easily. So we have the ability now to deploy, let's say, a whole museum and show actual 3D models of maybe actual things that people don't get to see on a regular basis, or from all over the world, you know. And there may be museums that have maybe even controversial pieces, and you know, if you put something on Decentraland, it can't be taken down. So you know, these are ideas that I've been kind of toying with, maybe not necessarily with museums, but information that just, you know, and using the models with information that, you know, like I said, cannot be erased because there's multiple nodes all over the world.
I know definitely that a lot of museums right now are exploring the idea of creating essentially virtual museums, just to allow. I mean, museums exist on that, you know, on the fact that people come to it and explore it, but especially now in the quarantine situation, it's been shut down.
Yeah.
The problem that I kind of see a little bit, for example, in the piece that we created here with Volkmar is not the person that can ultimately take us from this physical machine into something that he can build in digital. So we need more people like Tux that would facilitate it. Like right now we're working with artists from Russia. They're like 85 years old. They're selling artworks for like millions of dollars. The stuff that they have in their collection is absolutely incredible. It's these wooden models that are giant. They were built to essentially, you know, for physical spaces that never materialized. And so we're trying to create these models in the digital space and potentially put it in something like Decentraland, where at least, yes, this artwork was never built, but in digital space, it's not so expensive to create and for people to explore. So
exactly.
There needs to be more kind of technical facilitation for a lot of these artists to put more work out there, you know, like, I mean, they want it. They want to do it. I mean, certainly a lot of them are losing touch with like younger audience, and they know that they need to switch into digital space, but and they have the capacity and imagination to create incredible things. It's just the technical ability is not there. At Snark, we try to be that kind of intermediary. But even like, you know, like to build something like this, we still need people like Tuxam to be able to create, you know. So, you know, we have some know-how, but not everything. So there needs to be more of that happening as well.
Yeah, I believe that we'd see a lot more of that. I mean, even just my experience, when I started Decentraland, I was far from anybody that could do any sort of 3D modeling. And as I've gone along, it's been a necessity. So for me, you know, I turned this necessity now into somewhat of a skill. Now, don't call me to create somebody's art piece. That's different. But at the same time, you might see people, you might see a 16-year-old kid get into this, you know, somehow, some way, and then find himself, you know, knee deep in 3D artwork. And then next thing you know, now you can call on that kid because that kid, you know, maybe grew a lot faster than I could ever at the age of 37, you know?
Or that kid will create the next big thing.
And that's the other thing, yeah. My cousin had introduced me to an artist called Cause. You guys know what I'm talking about? Cause?
Of course, yeah.
He's got stuff in Brooklyn, I bet. But yeah, so, you know, a guy like that does giant physical artwork, you know, you could deploy that easily on one of these, you know, estates that have quite a bit of land, and then you can go really high, you know. And so, you know, I think those kind of things could be great physical representations. And then again, using the NFT smart contract stuff, that you could end up, you know, actually making it, you know, a scarce art piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but also you would actually essentially you would broaden the viewership of the artwork.
Exactly, because you don't have to be in Brooklyn to experience it. You know, because if I talk to somebody from, let's say, the middle of the woods north of me somewhere, they probably never heard of him and never would. But then if they get to walking around Decentraland and we had artists doing stuff like that within Decentraland, now they'd be exposed to something that you know, they might have never, ever been exposed to just because it was a physical thing that they would have had to find in a certain city or another, you know?
Or maybe you can imagine like different NFTs interacting differently. Like, so let's say I own an NFT, you own an NFT, and the magic only happens if both of us are in the same space, you know, like, so, or like each object would mutate, or maybe a third object would appear. I mean, like, these are like gamey type of things, but again,
no, but you know, useful
artwork that either mutates or changes with ownership, or somehow memorizes the information where it's been. And I mean, there's
proximity,
a lot of
yeah. No, that's really cool ideas, and this is why artists are very important, because they're going to be the ones that think so outside of the box that these things, you know, can create a whole new market, you know, for different things. You know, something like that I probably would have not thought of. But now that you bring that up, you know, if you had two NFTs that interacted just off of proximity, you know, or let's say the proximity of the avatar that has it in the wallet, you know, that could be something crazy.
Yeah, no. I mean, we have a lot of kind of, as we work with artists, it usually goes through many iterations. Like with video pieces, like generally the scarcity of video pieces is based on like the number of video pieces. But you could also imagine a video piece that can be viewed, I don't know, like 100 times, right? And each NFT that you sell is one view. So potentially the person that owns the last view, after it's viewed, the artwork is destroyed forever. That's like
it's the single version. Yeah, that's a really cool idea as well. Yeah, and you have a lot of crypto artists that do video artwork that way. So, you know, whether it's GIF artwork or actual video artwork, that, you know, that concept would change the game for them completely. You know, we have an artist named Josie that's involved in Decentraland a bit. And she really recently just put out an artwork and during one of our conferences that I was doing the video for, and it was really cool. Now, if you had that situation, you know, that would make that, you're right, that last play would be epic.
The last play, yeah. It makes it special. Or imagine an artwork that shows itself slowly over the next 100 years. Or maybe that starts out, I mean, like,
yeah.
Every day a new pixel appears, or I don't know, like you could
right. No, yeah. I mean, that's another idea. Like, you would give somebody, you know, you let's say, okay, so now you're with that idea, you know, let's say pixel by pixel it starts to show up, you know, and you know, you give it to somebody on like a child or something. You press play on their whatever birthday, you know, and then like, all right, when you turn 25, this thing will be a complete picture, and you'll know exactly what I was trying to tell you. You know, you know, passing on of knowledge almost, you know, in a certain way.
Absolutely.
So essentially, like all of those different features would need to be embedded in smart contracts, right? This is kind of the backbone of how to code those NFTs, right?
Yeah,
I mean, from our experience, ultimately, these are not like super complicated like notions, you know, like, so in other words, even like everything that we discussed so far in the past like 10 minutes, yes, it's some like minor modification of the smart contract to limit, let's say, views, but then you just have to come up with a mechanism on how to track it. But again, like it's all about, like, blockchain is ultimately a ledger, so it's not a complicated modification of a standard NFT. I mean, probably more important is to come up with a great artwork, but the mechanics, like, you know, like, of course, some is harder, some is easier. It depends on the implementation, but it's not like rocket science. Right. Like somebody who has decent knowledge of Solidity should be able to modify an NFT pretty easily. Same 16-year-old kid that is creating the new Decentraland can do it.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the trifecta, essentially. That's going to make it where you have, that's what makes it almost the most unique, is the fact that you have the three areas, the 3D modeler, the actual artist, and then the person who's going to code, you know? Because putting those worlds together is not the easiest. You know, they're really, standardly, they're different worlds. You know, the coder and the 3D artist, and then the artist. Those people are so far from each other in the regular world, and now we're combining those talents a lot in Decentraland. It's not a one-off situation, but more like this is the standard. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think there needs to be more organization that ultimately where all of these groups can easily come together. Like an artist can put out like a request just saying, I have this idea, I need help with this type of 3D visualization, and I need somebody to help me modify the NFT to be able to like limit this or to allow that. And maybe all three of them then combine forces, split up the NFTs. That could be their bounty for like, and the projects get made this way, you know, and ultimately maybe everybody will benefit, and hopefully with the same structure, you know, Decentraland will get filled up faster with the cool projects.
With really cool projects, yeah. We had I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a kind of a question about Momus Park. So maybe you know more about it, about the collective. I mean, Seb is not online to talk about it because he approached me, you know, essentially to deploy Sugar Club, to have, you know, a music venue in the park. But is it the idea that Momus Park is going to be kind of an area for sandboxing and kind of experimenting with multimedia type of projects? Do you know anything about this?
I mean, our experience with Seb was just he was kind of always following projects that we were releasing, starting from the very first project. And when we saw, I mean, only in February we saw the first realization of this Momus collect, you know, with this Volkmar's piece in Decentraland. But what's the bigger picture? You probably have to talk to Seb. I mean, from us, he's just somebody that supports various artworks that we create, and we are happy to connect him with the artists and technical team to help out with realizations of these ideas in Decentraland. But I don't know necessarily, I can't speak for him as far as what's the bigger picture.
Yeah, because from what I see, there's a lot of land available. So I was just curious. Maybe we can have next time Seb talking about what's their plan for the Momus Park, the Momus Collective.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to hear from most people about their projects, not to just say like, you know, trying to dig into your pockets and trying to figure out what your project is, but when you have conversations like this is an inspirational conversation. There's somebody that may have been working on a project, might be able to modify their project or modify their game plan to now, you know, do something else. What I've learned through my process is that, you know, in the beginning I might have been like hoarding ideas, and now I'm understanding that the job is so big to create Decentraland that hoarding ideas is a counterproductive for the collective. That we almost should be giving each other the ideas, because that's what makes the whole land a lot more valuable. You know, there's only so much you can work on. You know, I had to stop working on mostly everything behind doing interviews and working on the news project. So, you know, I could not no longer, like, my first thought was to work on music. I you know, music person from the beginning. I've been DJing for 20 years, hip hop person for forever. And, you know, all that had to be, like, put the brakes on that, because I felt I had a more important, you know, role to play. You know, and everybody's going to have their own role to play, but, you know, using all the ideas, we can create the, you know, the most, like, the nicest world that we can, and that's what's going to be the most valuable for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, certainly, I mean, Snark, when we launched, we had, you know, like a number of ideas, a number of conversations with artists, but what we're discovering is like these custom-based projects, like, commercially, it's very difficult to make one-off projects viable unless you have a large group of people contributing and are working on them. And so then a lot of these ideas we're never realizing, because it's just it sounds cool and a lot of people would be willing to participate in them, but just because we're too small, we have hard time realizing them. So what you're talking about would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And again, I think for that to happen, you need some kind of like very transparent mechanics so that people would be willing to share it, and other people willing to participate, and no one feels like they are, you know, giving more or less. Somehow, if it's structured in a way that makes it easy for people to collaborate, I think that would be a huge thing.
Right.
I think we're starting to see a little bit this movement in the right direction with the polygonal games. They started to open source some of their projects.
I heard that, yeah.
For people like us in the community who are busy trying to build Decentraland, to learn some tricks and check the code and see how they do things, and it's very helpful.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know we've been in contact, Kay, a bunch about, whether I'm having an issue trying to texture something, or if you are trying to figure out one of the, the implementations of the SDK that I might have been already implementing. That kind of working together is what's going to get you there, really, because no one person is going to know everything, especially when you have this, Misha's talking about, this kind of trilogy of, the coding person, the person that has the knowledge of the 3D artwork, and then the actual creative mind that's gonna think of the most craziest stuff that the other people could never have thought of. Even you just can't. Nobody has that much. I think that a natural Decentralander has not been born yet.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's true.
Guys, give me 1 second. I gotta step away just 1 second.
Oh, we lost Franky. So I hope tomorrow that many people come to the event.
Hard to say. Yeah, I don't know. I think somewhere you could tell. It says how many people registered.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. Usually, there's more people showing up than the actual registrations. So. Yeah. Will you actually be present in avatar form, or?
Yes, I hope. Yeah, definitely. I want to be.
What's your name, or your avatar name?
I don't like. I'll admit that I have not maybe even created a name. I walked around Decentraland, but for me it's just more of an experience. Most of the time we're building stuff outside of Decentraland, but
okay.
I'll send you the information once I figure it out.
Okay, good, nice. It's gonna be very nice. I will start with Sugar Club. So we're gonna have some drum and bass by Scott McCubry, I think. Yes, a music producer. I'm very excited about that. And there will be also a colleague of mine, a visual artist from Barcelona. She's featuring some of her art.
Okay.
And it's the first time that she's exhibiting in Decentraland, so she's very excited. She was very happy to be able to showcase something, so it should be very nice.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Franky, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. So, Kay, I always want to call you Sugar or Twos, or because I never had a name for you, but so as far as with Sugar Club now, what are your plans? Because I know you had spoke to me about something you figured out that may be able to do more with the club now. Do you have a near future plans for Sugar and to make it to expand on it?
So yeah, I had a kind of a breakthrough in terms of the optimization of the code, because for many months I was really struggling with the limitations of the scene. Right, you have a certain amount of textures that you can upload, and also polygons, right? So triangles. So I was really struggling to actually fill the club with artworks, with music files, and so on. And so I found a way, which was actually the trick that bows from the Decentral games.
Yep.
They figured this out, like I think a couple of months ago, where essentially, depending on where your avatar is located, some assets can be loaded and some others can be unloaded from the engine. And so I kind of figured that out, which allowed me to basically be able to load a lot more assets onto the club. So I've been busy this week really upgrading a lot of stuff. I'm really excited to showcase some of the new laser shows at the club, and there's going to be a lot more artworks there. So yeah, just in case of features, it keeps on growing. I just keep on learning how to make the club a better experience. And another really cool thing that I'm testing at the moment with the help of HP is membership access NFT. So
you had mentioned that, like, you're gonna have some sort of Mexican foam hat party. I can't get into the Mexican foam hat party.
So the idea is actually pretty simple. If you have an NFT that is minted from a specific contract in your wallet, it would open up the collider box that would be around the club or within any location within the club itself. So I could create a kind of a VIP area where if you have an NFT in your wallet, you can basically walk through it. So I'm testing this, and I think probably in the coming weeks I will have a kind of VIP party with people who have those NFTs and see if it works properly, and then maybe just kind of roll it out slowly. Releasing membership access. I keep it quite cheap because of course I need to build a community around this.
So do you think that is it gonna be a like you can't get into the Sugar Club altogether, or is it you can't get like up top?
So I'm just kind of playing with the ideas, right? So so far it's been months that the club is totally open access and you can just enjoy every event that I create there. But I have to kind of find a way to monetize those activities because it's a lot of work promoting. And also eventually, I want to pay the DJs or the musicians that get to, play at the club. So I have to find a way to kind of monetize the venue, especially if, you have the musicians coming and sometimes creating exclusive DJ sets. So it's nice if I can actually, offer them something in return for their work. So I think this is the best way because those NFTs, I create them myself. So I create the visuals. Usually they're in GIFs formats with video and digital art combined. So I can combine my artistic process into them and kind of engage the community with it because they can be resold on the secondary market on OpenSea, for example. So, if you get an early, VIP pass, you can resell it for a higher price maybe later on if they gain value. So it's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward for this.
Another thing I was thinking, just as you were saying that, you can just create tickets that way as well. Let's say you're having an event where you wanted to pay the artist, and the artist was a big artist, and you needed a lot of money to pay this person. So you making an NFT sale, 1,000 tickets, let's say, and then the NFTs they sell out, and then that's the people that can enter that concert. Let's call it a concert,
Yeah, I think there's, like what Misha was talking about in terms of utilities of those NFTs. It's the perfect way to do it. Without blockchain, it would be very difficult for me to actually find a system that is, trusted.
Exactly.
So it's pretty easy to do. HP came up with the code, in just a couple of hours. He sent me the files. Now I'm going to test it. And so it just allows for a lot of those different types of capabilities and functions. And it's actually pretty easy. What Misha was saying, it's basically a collider box that opens up if you have an NFT in your wallet. It's not rocket science in that sense.
And then the only thing is like what we're not discovering, but depends on because our projects vary. So sometimes you can make all NFTs have some kind of nominal cost, or you can say, for example, that I'm only going to have a scarce number of these membership passes. Let's say we're going to make it 1,000. And you kind of want people to be inside the club, so we're gonna give like 500 away for free, and the 500 you keep for resale later. So it's kind of what you said about the building that community, it becomes critical. And so because people are not always willing to pay before they see, and so you kind of allow like maybe potentially a hybrid where some early people get it for free, and then there's going to be market on OpenSea for these assets, and then based on the valuation of these assets, then you could start selling your tokens that you held back or things like that.
So it's kind of like a mini economy, which I'm also kind of learning as I go. And at the same time, you know, like for example, because of easy deployments, I could deploy a VIP party and create a specific type of VIP pass just for that event, you know. So that actually just gives me a lot of flexibility. I can have membership passes that are very cheap. Some of them are giveaways, so that the main club events are accessible for anybody who wants to just you know, listen to music. But if I have a specific event, I can also create that. So yeah, I'm looking forward for that.
Yeah, definitely. Are you looking to put a screen in there as well?
You mean a video screen?
Oh yeah.
Yes, eventually when I get around to figuring out.
Oh yeah, we'll get you set up with a video screen. That's easy. But yeah, that's gonna be, I think, something really good for you, because you can make a stage and, you know, just put the video screen behind there, you know. So that would be, I think, a great look for you over there. And one thing I want to say about you, a couple things actually, because I've learned a lot from you, first of all. And one of the things I didn't realize, honestly, because you could have fooled me, was that you were similar to me in a way that you didn't have all these skills prior to this, and that you learned a lot along the way. And so I you know, when it comes to people who own land, and, you know, you just kind of got to get in there. You got to get in there and do it. I think that one of your biggest, I call people superpowers all the time, one of your biggest superpowers is branding. And you've made this brand that everybody recognizes. So, you know, me dressing this TV in Sugar Club made a lot of sense because it's a brand, you know. And so, you know, if people can understand that, you know, very simple things can be done to monetize or to popularize your situation. You know, these are also, you know, part of the whole construct, you know, that it's not just dressing something up nice, and it's not just, it's not one or the other. It's a combination of things that's going to get you there, you know. And I think you've been a great example of that. I think that people, you know, should recognize that and then build on that in their own fashion and do whatever they want, you know.
Totally. For me, Sugar Club is essentially, it's an experiment in branding. I don't have a prior experience in this. I just started because I thought it was a cool thing. I wanted to build a club. That was my first intention, because I love music. I love sharing music. So, but the branding thing, it just happened, and I'm learning as I go, you know. But it is for me just an experiment, and it's a very nice one at that. So. It's very enjoyable, and it's a lot of purple everywhere. I love it.
Hey, it's great, and it's very recognizable. People, you know, people recognize it. People know, and it's starting to hold its weight as like a quality brand. You know, like almost a what do they call that? Seal of quality or whatever. You know, quality seal. I don't know, but basically, you know, it's something that people look at, and you know, Sugar is gonna do something that is gonna probably have a decent amount of quality because you've been to Sugar Club and you've experienced the events. Another thing is you going back and forth with CryptoVoxel and Decentraland. I think that's been great for our space to, you know, kind of have an inclusive way about you to just go ahead and, you know, invite the people from over there and then invite us to go over there and go see them. And there's not this kind of like tribalism or this kind of like thing. There's like, oh, you know, you should like this one and not that one. It's just like they're just places you can go in a digital space.
Well, I enjoy you know, the different worlds, different metaverses. For me, I don't understand the tribalism. I love to experience CryptoVoxels, Decentraland. So yeah, it just came out of the need to expand my creativity, because it's a completely different environment over there, and the building is different. The process of building. But for me, my biggest challenge now is actually the promotional aspect and finding musicians that are interested, because there is a kind of a friction from the DJ scene to move into virtual clubbing. It's for some it's a natural process, but for some others it's a new thing. So
I think that video can bridge that gap, because you could literally video a regular show if you were to get an artist to agree that that's something that they wanted to do. Then you can just create the stage, and the visuals of the stage would be the show itself. If you can get your audios right now, it's a little bit more difficult if you've been involved with music at all to get those audios right from a live show, but it can be done if you get the right people involved. It's going to cost some money, because people who do that kind of digital engineering, they're not cheap. I got friends that do that stuff, so I know that they're not going to do nothing for cheap. But I do know that it's possible, and these things should be second nature for us as a community soon enough. Like there should be a lot of music stuff going on in here. I think another obstacle is the licensing that we all have kind of experienced if you try to do anything with music in Decentraland, because you don't want to do it wrong,
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that we should all kind of maybe community get together on, because I don't think it's a mutually beneficial thing. It's to for us all to be able to basically have the artists we want or play the music that we want that would make things popular.
Yeah, the licensing is a tricky thing, because also we live in different parts of the world. So the licensing is different in Europe, and country by country they have a different licensing bodies. So I'm trying to figure it out here in the Netherlands, where I'm based. I got basic licensing for broadcasting, but that is in most cases not enough if I start to stream all kinds of electronic musics. So then I would need on top of that another license. So I try to keep it very local, and also play music that is either Creative Commons space, or I approach artists directly, and I see if they will be willing to share some music that they create, and that is not licensed. So this is it's a process. I think also the funds that were announced by the Decentraland team to help projects to kind of start up and continue developing, I think it would help. So probably I will apply for some help to continue with the Sugar Club, and to get those licensing in order, because it's expensive. If you're an amateur, and if you build content and you have all these overhead costs, you have to start to think of it as a business, because
because it's not sustainable for it not to be. If you're putting money in and not getting any out, at some point you just have to shut the operation down. So monetization is very important here, even though it's one of those things that rubs some people the wrong way, but it needs to be talked about pretty much on every project. And Misha spent mentioning the whole making an NFT could make things work a lot better for the artist, the developer, and the 3D modeler. That's super important to keep these cool projects coming, because you're not going to have anybody really willing to just put in all this time in order to get nothing out of it.
Yeah, it's on a short-term basis it's possible, but long-term it's not sustainable. I mean, you make somebody doing things for free for like a few weeks or a month, but for us, certainly, like, to create a project, it's costly. It just takes time, and don't always have the expertise, and to try to find somebody to do it for free is difficult. And even if you do find somebody, it's maybe you're gonna get what you pay for, which is like very good quality. So.
Exactly. Yep. So guys, I want to go ahead and leave it off here, just because I've got the roundtable coming up in about an hour. I really appreciate you guys coming by. Sugar, I really appreciate you setting this up. Kay, I apologize for calling you Sugar all the time. Misha, thank you very much for explaining all this. This was amazing. I think that a lot of people are going to take a lot from this, and I'll have a video of this up soon enough, probably hopefully within an hour. Again, I appreciate you guys taking the time and talking to the people out here, because very important subjects were discussed, so that's pretty cool.
Thank you, guys.
Nice. Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Franky.
No, thanks so much, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon, I'm sure.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.